playing on the same college football team, working the same job after college, and becoming wrestlers together. The Uso twins have been inseparable since birth. Despite starting at the bottom, they've had the longest reign over the tag team championship in WWE history. But why did they suddenly break up? Why did they start hating each other? And more importantly, who was the person to make this happen? The Usos hail from the legendary Samoan family, being the sons of Hall of Famer Rikishi. Despite coming from a family that includes legends like Yokozuna and The Rock, the twin brothers initially didn't see professional wrestling as a full-time career. Both brothers always dreamed of becoming football superstars. They played football at Escambia High School in Pensacola, Florida, and were stars alongside Roman Reigns. Their main focus was to have an ACC playing career, but there was one problem. They were supposed to be recruited together to D1 Georgia Tech, but they did not have any use for Jimmy and Jey because of their size. They just weren't big enough. Their high school coach tried to talk to the coach to take all three of them by telling him that Jimmy and Jey haven't even hit their growth spurt yet. In all fairness, they did get bigger, but their physical development did not come quick enough for Georgia Tech. Since Georgia Tech didn't work out in their favor, their coach didn't give up on him, and he ended up taking them down to his old school, West Alabama, where they hung out with the head coach. They eventually ended up playing for UWA, Jimmy the 2003 season and Jey from 2003 to 2005. After college didn't work out, both went into the working world to a 9-to-5 for 4 to 5 years. Their late uncle Umaga was the one that got them both into wrestling. His exact words were, "You guys are twins. You guys are athletes. You shouldn't be sitting behind a desk working 9 to 5. You should be doing something else."
It was like 3 in the morning. We had work the next day.
They kissed their kids, packed their clothes up, and they took off to Houston.
Umaga moved them to Houston, where they lived with him for 2 years. They found out that Booker T had a wrestling school in Houston and got in contact with him. He showed them some techniques and how to wrestle the proper way, and they ended up getting hooked and addicted to wrestling. After a brief run in FCW, the Usos made their main roster debut in 2010 by attacking and laying out the Hart Dynasty. Since then, they have dominated the tag team division, whether it was the time when they had painted their faces or when they turned heel in 2016. During this longevity, they won the tag team championships 8 times and even became the undisputed tag team champions in May 2022. Now, it was evident from the moment the Usos stepped foot in the ring that they had incredible chemistry together. Even as they slowly climbed the ranks in the tag team division, a potential dream match between them was always within sight. However, WWE seemed to be holding out for a huge storyline for the future. And they finally got that chance in 2020, where a leg injury that kept Jimmy out for months paved the way for Jey to finally become Main Event Jey Uso. This is when everything started to take a turn for the worse between the brothers. At that time, neither of the twins had ever gone through a singles career, and it was even difficult for fans to distinguish between them both in looks and personalities, and also who was better. It just so happened that another family member stepped up to give Jey the push that he needed as a singles competitor. At SummerSlam 2020, Roman Reigns returned to WWE and made it clear that he had his sights on the Universal Championship. He aligned himself with Paul Heyman and won the Universal Championship, marking the beginning of one of the most historic reigns in WWE history. It became evident that Reigns was no longer the same person, and the birth of the Tribal Chief was a much-needed change during the Thunderdome era. And his first challenger for the Universal Championship was none other than Jey Uso. On paper, this seemed like a mismatch between arguably the biggest star in the company and a guy who had mostly only competed in tag team matches. However, the deep family connection and strong chemistry, along with their years of history together, added a layer of intrigue. Their bout at Clash of Champions proved why WWE chose Jey as Roman's first challenger. It was a clear, one-sided beatdown by Roman, who clearly wanted Jey to acknowledge him. This match was a masterpiece in terms of storytelling because you could tell that they really didn't want to hurt each other, but would do whatever it took to achieve their goals. To everyone's surprise, injured Jimmy Uso came out and threw in the towel to stop the match. The events at Clash of Champions led to a rematch at Hell in a Cell. The I Quit match was as brutal as it sounded. Jey endured an unimaginable amount of pain as Reigns delivered spear after spear, but he refused to give up. Once again, Jimmy Uso showed up, pleading for them to stop the match. Reigns cried like an Oscar-winning actor, but then shockingly put Jimmy in the guillotine, which forced Jey to say, "I quit." After Jimmy interfered in both of Jey's matches with Roman, some people were saying that Jimmy was taken up for his brother, but some were saying that Jimmy was jealous that Jey was getting shot after shot at chances to win the title, something that he felt he deserved more than Jey. In terms of storytelling, Jey was at rock bottom, and without having his brother as a tag team, he was all alone. Roman's mind games had worked on him, leaving Jey with no choice but to align with him. He became Roman's right-hand man and began assisting him in his championship matches. After more than a year of absence due to his leg injury, Jimmy Uso finally returned to action in May 2021. Tensions were very high between the trio, as Jimmy had not forgotten what Roman had done to his twin just a few months ago. However, Jimmy eventually fell in line and acknowledged the tribal chief. Soon after, the Usos won the tag team championships from Rey and Dominic Mysterio at Money in the Bank 2021. Aligning with Roman Reigns and becoming part of the bloodline brought the Usos more success than anyone could have ever imagined. It also proved to be the greatest title reign of the Usos, as no team managed to beat them for a record 622 days. After Roman Reigns defeated Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 38 and unified the Universal and WWE Championships, he asked his cousins to unify the Tag Team Championships. The Usos soon defeated Randy Orton and Matt Riddle and became the undisputed Tag Team Champions. Even though the bloodline seemed unstoppable, they always left you wondering if they would stay together for very long. The bloodline continued their reign from accepting Sami Zayn to Sami turning on Roman with a chair shot to his back. Reigns, Jimmy, and Solo began beating Sami, but Jey couldn't even stay in the ring because of what was transpiring. He left the ring with a disgusted look on his face towards Roman, Solo, and especially Jimmy, indicating cracks in the bloodline. Jey seemingly disappeared over the next few days, but returned to action at SmackDown to defend the undisputed Tag Team Championships against Ricochet and Braun Strowman. Surely he still loved his brother and didn't want him defending the titles all alone. Zayn and Owens, who were hell-bent on destroying the bloodline, reunited and challenged the Usos for the undisputed Tag Team Championships at WrestleMania 39. This was arguably the biggest story heading into WrestleMania, and expectations were at an all-time high. It was rare to witness a match that balanced storytelling and intense action so effectively. Towards the end, emotions ran high as Sami Zayn delivered 3 hell-of-a kicks to Jey, ultimately dethroning the longest-reigning WWE Tag Team Champions in WWE history. Ultimately, it was this match that signaled the downfall of the Usos, as the following week on SmackDown, Roman Reigns was furious with them and couldn't accept the fact that his cousins had lost the Tag Team Championships. Roman tried to make the Usos apologize for losing the titles. Jimmy wasn't having it, and Roman shoved him in his face right before Jey jumped in and apologized for the both of them. In the ensuing weeks, Roman demanded that the Usos regain the Tag Team Championships, but they once again fell short. After that, Roman Reigns started down-talking Jimmy and treating them like his servants and not his family. While Jimmy and Roman were bumping heads, Jey would step in the middle and defuse the situations. Jimmy was getting really sick and tired of Roman talking to him any kind of way. Jimmy tried his best to make Jey open his eyes and really see how disrespectful Roman was being to him and his brother, but Jey was more concerned with keeping the family together. Eventually, Reigns and Solo issued a challenge to Owens and Zayn at Night of Champions, seeking to finish the work that his cousins were unable to do. Towards the end of the match, the Usos tried to help Roman, but he started yelling at Jey and pushed him in the face, and that's when Jimmy super kicked Roman, defending his brother. But what he says next to Jey may have really woke Jey up.
I'm doing what you said and done a long time ago.
It made sense to see why Jimmy lost his cool in the first place, because he was always reluctant to join the bloodline the first time. But now, fans were undeniably on the edge of their seats as the story had the potential to unfold in various directions. Given Jey's tendency to get manipulated by Reigns, there was speculation that he might even betray his own twin to remain loyal to the tribal chief. Then, he super kicks Roman again. Roman did something really vicious the next week on SmackDown, where he tried to give an order to Jey to superkick his own brother for what he did, but instead, Jimmy ended up pushing Roman in the face and getting attacked by Solo. Here is where it gets really interesting, to where Jey got a glimpse of how his brother really feels about him. When Jimmy and Roman go back and forth with Jey on whose side he should be on, he learns something that really shocked him. Jey couldn't believe that his brother, his twin, had a problem with him having a better position than him in the bloodline. Jey confronted him about it and he didn't deny it. After that, Jey just flipped and started talking about all the times he was in Jimmy's shadow. Jey was so pissed, he even mentioned how Jimmy was Mr. Prom King, Mr. Player of the Year, and Mr. Most Likely to Succeed. In a moment of defiance, he declared to his brother Jimmy, "You're out and I'm out too," before delivering a powerful super kick to Roman Reigns and joining forces with his brother Jimmy. Who knew that moment of Jey opening up would lead to the events that would follow after SmackDown? Roman had opened up some wounds inside of Jey about his brother that had never healed. Roman knew exactly what buttons to push. The stage was then set for the Bloodline Civil War at Money in the Bank. It was an all-out war between the cousins, each fueled by a sense of anger and revenge. In an unbelievable match filled with numerous near falls, the Usos did the unthinkable when Jey pinned Roman Reigns to emerge victorious in the United Kingdom. It marked the first time Roman had been pinned since December 2019, and the man who ultimately achieved this feat couldn't have been more fitting. But this humiliating loss, especially at the hands of his former right-hand man, had pushed Roman over the edge, and thus, the following week, he and Solo viciously attacked Jimmy right in front of Jey. Following a commercial break, Jimmy Uso was shown being stretchered into an ambulance with Jey Uso by his side. But soon, Jey returned to the arena and ultimately declared what everyone was yearning to hear for the past 3 years. After taking out Solo Sikoa, he held the undisputed championship and challenged Roman Reigns for a one-on-one match at SummerSlam 2023. This was going to be Roman's biggest title defense. Everything was at stake, including his tribal chief status. In the closing moments of the tribal combat match between Roman and Jey, Jimmy returned and attacked his brother, costing him the match. This was clearly a sign of jealousy. After all the times Jey has had Jimmy's back, for him to come back and betray his brother is a huge slap in the face. This is like the time when Jimmy was jealous of his fiancée Trinity and tried to get her storyline cut out of the WWE. He doesn't like when people start moving above him. In the next edition of SmackDown, Jimmy made it clear that the only reason he attacked Jey was that he was afraid to lose him. That if Jey became the undisputed champion, then where does that leave him? That he was also afraid that he would become just like Roman. And again, this made no sense. Jey, rightfully so, super kicked Roman Reigns, left the ring to tell Jimmy to come here, and super kicked Jimmy, and officially marked the end of the Usos by quitting WWE. But at Payback 2023, Cody Rhodes announced that he had helped Jey Uso move from SmackDown to Raw. Jey easily transitioned as a singles competitor on Raw. He was extremely over with the crowd and started a yeet movement that became his new identity. Meanwhile, Jimmy was reluctantly accepted back in the Bloodline fold, and he was clearly a shadow of his former self. There was clearly a shift in popularity between the twins, and Jimmy's jealousy would soon get the best of him. Jey quickly found a new ally in Cody Rhodes, and as odd as the pairing was between them, they could easily work together as a team. They soon defeated the Judgment Day to become the undisputed tag team champions at Fastlane 2023. But shockingly, it was just a 10-day reign as Jimmy again showed his true colors by costing his brother his tag team championship. Surely it was Roman Reigns who had sent Jimmy on his orders, but there was also an element of jealousy as Jey's only tag team partner was his own twin, and Jimmy surely couldn't bear to see Cody prospering alongside him. Jey soon got back at him by invading SmackDown a few days later just to get his hands on Jimmy. The next time Jey and Jimmy would be in the same ring happened to be at 2024 Royal Rumble. Entering the match at number 1 and number 2 respectively, it was a surreal sight to see them in the same ring. It was clear that there was a long-term plan for Jey and Jimmy to fight at WrestleMania, but WWE seemed to be holding this war of words for WrestleMania season. Meanwhile, Jey, who was riding high on his singles career, challenged Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship match. Jey was close to securing the victory after delivering multiple spears to Gunther, but Jimmy once again put the nail in the coffin by once again costing him a huge championship match. Jimmy's post-match attack on Jey made it clear that he was clearly envious of his younger brother. From a storytelling perspective, there was a clear shift in popularity between the Usos. For years, it was Jimmy who was the popular twin, and Jey was the silent and serious twin. But after the resurgence of Main Event Jey Uso, he was surrounded by like-minded allies such as Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, and Seth Rollins, while Jimmy's only namesake allies seemed to be Solo and Roman, who looked like he was ready to kick him out of the faction at any time. In the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 40, Jey finally issued a challenge to Jimmy because he was tired of his twin taking opportunities away from him. On the March 15th episode of SmackDown, Jimmy accepted the challenge. In a heated segment, the brothers didn't hold back from dropping truth bombs on each other. Jey exploded by telling him that he was jealous of him, and Jimmy vowed to teach him a lesson. At WrestleMania promos, Jey talked about Jimmy being jealous of him and gave him the nickname Jealous Jimmy. Additionally, their clash would undoubtedly be compared to other brother versus brother matches across WrestleMania history, such as Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, Undertaker versus Kane, and Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy. As anticipated as it was, there was no spark about their WrestleMania match. Given that this was a personal rivalry between two twin brothers, this match could have delivered more. Although there was an interesting moment during the match where Jimmy seemingly tricked Jey by indicating that he now changed, but it again proved to be one of his many tactics. Jey would pin his brother for the 1-2-3 and show who is the more talented among the two. In a post-match interview, Jey confessed that he still loves his twin, but he won't forget what Jimmy did to him.